Kirst interview with Edith and Lynn Nelson by Alma R. Edwards for the Kentucky Bicentennial Oral History Project. The interview was conducted at Lynn Nelson's house on April the 5th at 8 p.m. Lynn, how long have you been a farmer?
60 years.
60 years. Would you tell us some of the ways that farming has changed since you first started?
It's changed a whole lot.
Well, just tell us some of the ways that it's changed since the time you started farming.
There's farm with mules.
You farmed strictly with mules. About what years did the tractors first come out?
I bought my first tractor in 1935.
1935. And did they improve them as the years went along with the tractors? What years did you say the mules went out in Marshall County as far as farming was concerned?
Well, I guess it is up to about 1950. There's one minute left.
They left in 1950. Approximately how many acres of land did you farm?
You ought to ask me this before I start. I don't know.
Well, we've got 70 some here. We did.
You mean what all I've had?
About how many acres did you farm at a time?
Oh, about with the team.
Yes.
About 25.
And about how many did you farm with the tractor then?
Well, I've had size 300-400 acres.
Quite a difference, isn't it? What was the main crops that you farmed? What's the main thing that you raised on the farm?
Tobacco, corn, wheat.
Have you ever raised much cotton?
No, they didn't raise it.
My husband said that when he was small down here, they raised cotton to stuff quilts and things with.
They did some.
Did your parents ever raise any?
No.
My mother raised.
Your mother raised. Did you ever pick cotton?
Yeah, so.
And Scotty says it's very hard to pick.
It is this bad.
But cotton has never been a leading farm product in this part of the country, as far as you can remember. What about strawberries? Wasn't that kind of
Yeah,
leading?
we had strawberries back in, I don't know, what year about
26.
26.
And they used to have a strawberry plant or something where they take strawberries to sell them,
Yeah.
but they don't do that anymore, do they? Now,
At first, we had to take them to the market. Then they got shipping.
Pleasure.
now most of the people have strawberries just for their own use, isn't it? Now, you said you raised tobacco and wheat and corn. Is there a ready market for all those products still in Marshall County? When you were with the mule, did you have to sell them away from Marshall County, or was you able to sell them in Marshall County?
We sold them close to Marshall.
Close to Marshall County.
Maybe.
What other things do you think farming has changed, except just the mules and tractors?
Well, they raise more of it, and they don't raise as much tobacco as they used to.
There's more corn.
More corn and soybeans. They used to raise soybeans. Now they got everything soybeans.
About what year do you think they started raising soybeans in Marshall County?
About 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
In other words, it's just a recent crop in Marshall County. What Edith?
Our farm is more on a big business now than it used to be. You didn't raise anything. You didn't have too much to sell.
This was strictly a farm for your own use.
And now, we just try to raise enough corn for ourselves. And,
Back then,
the cattle and the horses.
tobacco for money crop.
Tobacco was strictly the money crop.
And then the wheat.
For now, the corn and everything's money crops.
Yeah.
Soybeans, corn, and tobacco, and all is money crops.
We don't have stock to eat it like we had to feed our stock to work.
Now, there's not many people anymore that keeps any stock at all, are they? Except they raise them for profit.
Only cattle, hogs. Some people raise hogs, cattle. I've been in cattle.
You've been in both of them. Would you say was most money strictly farming crops for money, or raising cattle and hogs?
Crop for money.
Crops is the best for money all the way around, you would say. Edith, how has the farmer's wife life changed from the time you started housekeeping and now?
Well, it's quite a bit easier.
It's a lot easier now. When you first started living here, there wasn't any electricity out this way, was there?
No,
Everything was done by oil lamps. And what did you cook with here when you first started? Coal or wood?
wood.
Wood. Would you say that most of the farmers back in your time used wood for cooking and heating and all that? When did coal first start coming in here for people to use? When I first married in 45, some people was burning coal for heating. But when did you say that?
We began when we got the heat rolled.
I don't know when that was.
Was it before the Second World War or after the Second World War?
Before the second.
Before the Second World War. But wood is strictly the mainstay for heating and
Back,
cooking.
like a long time ago.
Back a long time
Then we
ago.
got to using coal. Then we got gas, furnace,
That's right.
about 45, wasn't it?
I don't know.
When we got electricity. We got gas.
Oh, we got the electricity right after the war. We already had our line built through here.
That's
all
the Second World War now, isn't it?
All but the transformer. After the war, they got the transformers, and then we got electricity.
But both of you agree that life on a farm is a lot easier than it was when you first started.
Yeah.
Would you say it costs more for a farmer to get started now than it did when you
Oh, it costs lots more.
Lots more. It's harder now for a person to get started on a farm than it
Yeah.
was when you first got married, isn't it?
Take a lot more money.
A lot more money. Lynn, would you advise someone to go into the farming business since you spent your life practically on it?
It's a good business.
It's a good business. And you would encourage the young people
Yeah.
to do that,
You can make money farming.
make money farming. I know that the prices of everything has really increased in the last few years. But about fertilizer now, and these things, weed insect killers, when you first started, they have all that?
No,
They didn't use so much fertilizer and
didn't
insect.
have any fertilizers any good at all, just 20%. They wasn't much fertilizer.
So that's one reason that they're able to raise more crops
Yes.
due to the fertilizer. And they advertise all the time now about this weed killer to kill your weeds. Has that been a big help?
Yeah.
Cut down the workload a lot.
But we just had Paris green and what was the other? White?
Arsenic lead.
Yeah, arsenic and lead. Sprayed with tobacco with it was.
So you say that all this has been an advantage.
There wasn't anything for your garden or anything
But we didn't have as many insects.
Wait a minute, Doug, don't start it. Lynn, you and Edith was both married when the Depression came in 29, wasn't you?
No, we was married before.
You was married before that. So how would you say that the Depression affected your life at that time?
It's hard to make a living, say that much.
Well, it was hard for everyone,
Yeah.
but people on the farm, do you feel they were luckier than people in the cities?
I don't know much about the city, but it's hard to make it on the farm.
It's hard to make it on a farm.
I think it's pretty hard on the
I know, they say that a lot of people in the cities went hungry. Do you say anybody on the farms that they worked, they went hungry?
No, I don't think so.
But it was hard work.
You didn't have any luxuries or anything, you just existed.
But you did have the necessities, what they say, of
The
life.
necessities.
We
Food.
raised most of our stuff.
In other words, the farms were all self-sufficient, you might say. Now, how has that changed over the years from now?
Really, you got to where the farms don't raise their food like they used to. They buy everything.
Strictly money crops, what they sell. I know you and Edith both still has garden, and Edith has her chickens, which you don't see too much of around Marshall County anymore. And I know that you still kill and cure your hams and things like that, which you don't see in Marshall County. You do that just for the pleasure of it, or in order
Oh, I get the best meat.
to get the best meat? Well, that's what I say is a good reason. Now, we're going to talk a little about religion. How do you think it's changed from the time you were small and now?
Oh, I don't see much difference.
You don't see much difference? You think people went to church back then about the same as they do now? Has there been many new religions come into this part of the Marshall County since you was a boy, or what's here now was here when you was a child. Pretty much stayed the same in Marshall County. What about folk the tales and stories that people tell, the music and that? Has it changed much from the time you were young, or
I don't know what it is.
it just changes with the times as it goes? What about the river life in Kentucky? Did you ever have much to do with taking logs on the river, like they say a lot of people takes logs down rivers and that? Did you ever have anything to do with that, lumber?
No.
You never had anything to do with that. You ever raise horses to sell and race?
No, I raised them to work.
You raised your horses to work. Another thing I want to talk about was education. When you was growing up, you went to Benton. Did they have a high school when you was going to high school?
Yes.
They did have a high school in Marshall County. Edith, you didn't go to Benton, did you? You went
No,
to
I wouldn't. Pleasant Valley.
Pleasant Valley. Now, where was that located?
On the Silk Road.
On Oak Rail Road. That school's no longer there, is
No,
it?
it hadn't been considered.
Was that a one room or two room or what?
One room.
One room. Where they didn't teach all eight grades in that?
Up to date. I mean, including.
And after that, they went to Benton, the high school. What, did you have one teacher for that?
One teacher.
Would you like to tell us a little something about your school?
Oh, we had a lot of good times.
A lot of good times. What was it like? What was your seats made of?
Oh, they were bought seats, but odds and ends that they collected down
Odds and
there.
Did you ever write on the slate, or did you have pencil and paper?
Well, both. When I first started and I was small, I had the slate.
You had the slate.
And we had tablets too, but we had the slate. That saved paper.
How much was a pencil when you first started school? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I think about a penny a piece.
I know when I started school, we had what we call penny pencils.
Yeah.
With the razor. Lynn, what about you? Did you ever write on a slate when you went to school, or was it a paper?
No, I don't think so. I used paper.
No, you used paper. But what about sports when you went to school? Did they have sports a lot when you
Yeah.
go? They had sports back then. I said, has sports always been a big part of Marshall County?
As a Benton, I don't know about the Marshall County. There was always football, baseball. There wasn't too much basketball.
But football and baseball and that. Edith, I heard you say that when you was going to school, you played basketball some.
Yeah. I enjoyed that
And
more
you
than any other game I ever played.
And you said the boys and girls played together. And so co-education in sports is not anything new, is it?
No.
Yeah. What about education back then? Do you think they got a better education, or now? What would you say
Yeah,
about?
I do.
You think they got a better education when you were going to school?
I think what they learned it thorough.
There's no such a thing as passing them if they didn't know it, was there?
No.
You had to
You had to
qualify.
know it.
You had to qualify
Yeah.
to get past to the next grade. Another thing we wanted to talk about is what libraries. Did they have libraries when you were growing up?
Yeah.
They had the library in Marshall County. So as far as that, Marshall County's been pretty well advantaged with the schools and reading materials since you were small. What about private schools? Do they have any private schools around in Marshall
No,
County?
not that I know.
I don't know of any either. Do you know of any either? when you was
No,
growing
I
up?
don't.
It was all public education. And you think that they did a good job with the public education? Very good. Another thing we wanted to talk about is politics. Has politics been about the same throughout your life?
Yeah.
You think it's been about the same? People are about as interested now as they were then?
Yeah.
Lynn, would you like to take a few words and just tell us something about your life? Some of the different things you've done in it?
Well, I ain't never done nothing much but farm.
That
Carpenter's a little work, done carpenter work.
Carpenter work. So many people in this part of the country have gone away to work at different times. Have you gone away to work?
I went to work in Central Australia before I was married.
Is that in Illinois?
In Reverend's house. I worked about a year. And then I come back here and we married.
So you've strictly been a farmer in this part of the country.
And we went to Detroit in 26. 26.
25, come back to 26.
Stayed there about a year.
How do you think the electricity has changed this part of the country?
It's helped it really.
You would want it to be done over again.
And I wouldn't want to have to go back to the lamp.
I mean, you would agree for electricity to come again.
Yeah,
You're not one of these people that says that the old ways were the better ways.
no.
I'm glad to hear that. Edith, what about you? What's some of the ways that you think electricity has helped you?
It's made my work a lot easier. Washing machine, dishwasher, sweepers, cleaners, everything.
Lynn, what was your parents' name? We forgot to ask that.
Hoy Nelson and Lucy Southern Nelson.
And Edith, what was your parents' name?
John Smith and Nola McGregor.
Has your family been in Marshall County quite a few years,
All
Lynn?
their life.
All their life. How about their grandparents? Do you know about your
They
grandparents?
was too.
So, and yours too, Edith? So we can say that both of you come from the long life of Marshall County and that the history is here in Marshall County. What do you think about this Kentucky Lake over here? What do you think?
It's helped out.
You think it's helped Marshall County? And you don't mind all the tourists that it brings in? And you're glad to see the people. Right now, there's a lot of pros and cons about bringing alcohol, bringing, as they call it, wet back to Marshall County. Do you think that that would be good or bad for Marshall County?
I don't know if it makes much difference with me.
As far as you're concerned in your life, it would affect you one way or the other. But you remember when it was wet in Marshall County, don't you?
Well, they didn't do any worse then than
No.
they do now.
No.
Now, we can erase this, we don't want this in. But
Well, I don't really care how anybody knows
there's a lot of pros and
how I
cons
feel
about
about
that,
it.
and that's one of the things they have on here to ask you about. But, Edith, I know that your parents were farmers here too.
Yes,
Is that what they did all their life?
all their life.
And Lynn, what about yours?
Mine too.
So both of you come from a long line of farmers, we'll say. Well, I really don't know much else to ask you unless you have something to tell me about farming. But I'd like that.
Oh, I regret that I just didn't have as easy things to work with always as I do have.
Something else I wanted to bring out, Edith, is that you sold real well. Has farmers always sold to women?
Most all I ever did, they had to.
But what do you think about the materials now when you were young?
Oh, they're so much better.
You agree with
It's
all that?
much easier to use and it's much easier kept.
And don't you think that people now, people looks up to you, you're able to make clothes when before it was a kind of a letdown?
Yeah, they didn't, if you wore a ready-made dress, you was a lot nicer looking, they thought.
They thought. So that's one thing that's changed for the
Yeah.
better for the people that has sold. But I can remember seeing clothes made out of what they call sugar sacks and things like that.
Well, if I would have had a ready-made dress, I'd have felt real proud of it.
Lynn, what about the land? Do you think all this soybeans and all this fertilizer, do you think that helps or does that help to build it up?
It's a lot better.
You think the land is a lot
Yeah, it's a
better
lot better.
than it was before?
This farm was wore out when I bought it.
And you think
And now it'll make anything.
you think through proper caring for it and fertilizing
Yeah.
and keeping it, it's really helped it? In other words, you can see no end to farming as long as people takes care of the land
No.
correctly. What about way Benton has changed in your town? How would you
Oh, it's changed a lot.
What's some of the things in Benton that was there when you were a youth that's not there now?
Back when I was a boy, I knew nearly everybody in Benton.
What about Marshall County? Practically everybody in Marshall County or just Benton?
But not as much in the
But
county.
when you were young, you knew most of Benton. What's some of the places that was in Benton when you were young that is not there now?
J.F. Brandon or J.R. Brandon, which was it? Grocery there. You mean the ones that wasn't?
The ones that was in Benton that's gone now. What's some of the places that you remember in
Morgan
Benton?
and the Heath,
Ferguson.
Ferguson's.
Are these department stores, grocery stores, or what?
Brandon's is
Brandon's a
gone.
grocery store.
Oh,
Brandon Lumber Company's gone.
Yeah, Brandon Lumber Company. Morgan Heath's gone.
What were they?
They was a grocery and hardware.
Grocery market.
And Ferguson was hardware. And there was 2 or 3 hotels there. They're gone.
What were some of their names of the hotels? Do you remember?
McDaniel.
Whereabouts were these hotels located? Do you remember where they were located at?
One of them was there where the loan company, what's the name
Finance company.
of it? The
There used to be a hotel there. Do you remember where the other two were?
Where the
one-
Church of Christ is at.
Yeah, where the Church of Christ is, and one there where the National Store, big hotel.
In other words, where the National Store is now, that
Mhm.
once was a hotel?
There used to be liver stables there, 2 or 3 of them.
Whereabouts were they?
Down there where the parking lot of the Church of Christ is one of them.
They used to be,
And the other one's over on where Philip Chevrolet is. And then there's one over there where Phil Benton Cannon.
so there was quite a few around the court square. What about, would you say the first funeral homes came in this part of the country? Were they here when you was a child, or?
Old man John Kinney used to bury people. He didn't have a funeral, he just had a place to pick out the caskets, they didn't take people.
They'd have your funerals at the home.
Yeah,
So, you say John Kennedy
John Kinney,
was one of the first ones in Marshall County?
first one that I know.
And who came after him?
Morgan Heath,
And then who was after them?
Phil Benton Cannon again.
So that's an old name in the funeral business here in Marshall County. Oh,
Blacksmith shop used to be here.
Yeah,
where was the blacksmith shop at then?
it was down there where that mill, right below where y'all had that store. Around the
Down
corner.
where the pool hall.
Yeah.
Back to that about where they kept these liver stables. People with these salesmen, you know, things would come in on the train and then they'd rent a horse and buggy or 2 horses and a buggy to
Then
drive.
they run a bus from town from Depot. This trailer company, they run a
Well,
bus.
that's something that used to be here, even when I was a kid. It's not here any longer, the depot
Oh,
and
they-
Yeah,
depot agent.
Yeah.
And,
They'd rent these horse and buggies and go to these little groceries, you know, out in the country and around and sell things.
Like a drummer?
And the tobacco buyers, they would do the same. They'd go,
there used to be a boarding house or a hotel over there about where Marshall County Bank is. Remember that facility?
no,
Yeah.
it's National Store.
oh, yeah, well, there was one over there.
Went over there
Oh, yeah.
not too many
Yeah, I
years
forgot
ago
about
over there
that.
about where Marshall County
Yeah,
Bank is.
I
don't
forgot
remember
about
what they
that.
call it.
Right there
Big
where
old
that's
bank.
at.
Yeah.
Large wine building over there.
I forgot who operated. I do know who operated it last.
So you've seen a lot of changes in Benton.
It used to be, it wasn't very big, and now Benton's 3 or 4 times bigger.
Used to be everything was right around the square. wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, talking about the square, there used to be a theater in Benton, didn't there?
Yeah.
When would you say a theater first came to Benton? You recall?
About 1935, 40, I
Was
guess.
the first one that came to Benton? And it-
No, they had one for the first one they had was over there in the Old Methodist Parsonage.
And where was that at?
So where Miss Williams, Bill Williams lived.
What part of Benton would that be in?
It was right west of Baptist Church.
And that was the first theater. Where was the other theater at?
There used to be one there on the corner where that's Hutchins used to be.
That's the style.
Hutchins style.
Moved over there where
Love
where
it.
Ben,
Martin Prince and,
Marvin Prince built it.
yeah.
What about the 10-cent stores? It always been where it's,
No.
where some of the locations it's been,
It used to be right there by Morgan's.
where Morgan's is now.
Morgan moved it over there on the corner where Morgan Heath used to be.
You know, years ago too, Peterson Hardware was there.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Darn.
J.D.
Don
Peterson.
John Peterson there where Western Auto was.
No, it's there on the corner.
Was it on the corner?
Yeah.
And then the Ford dealership used to be where the Chevrolet dealership is now. We used to have an entranceway that come out on Main Street, there where the Western Auto is.
Yeah.
That's when Goldie Smith, back in the 30s.
Talking about cars and dealerships, how's the roads changed in Marshall County since
They're a
you,
lot better.
a lot better?
They went from dirt roads to hardtop.
I think there's very few roads in Marshall County now, it's not blacktop.
Yeah.
Well, when we first moved here,
This
you
road was
couldn't
dirt.
drive a car
In the wintertime, you had to put your car up.
and dirt roads.
So in other words, when you bought your first car, you could only use it if the weather permitted,
In the summertime.
in the summertime. It was strictly just a summer car. But
Well, after Christmas, the last day you used.
after Christmas, you put
We
it up.
try to go to Purdue for Christmas, y'all.
Sometimes you could hardly get there and back.
I know us and Patrick Manuel. We stuck 2 or 3 times. We went this other road to Paducah, you know, like we go now. It's, of course, it's changed too. And some, it used to go down through this land that we own in the dollars. And I don't know how many times we stuck that day of going to Paducah.
When did they build that road? I mean, you know, build up the dirt ones without boxes.
It wasn't built. No,
The
really.
old road used to go down now, like First
Well, I mean,
Street,
was
Didn't
there
it?
always?
Yeah.
down through there.
And it was just level with the other dirt. It wasn't built up, it's just gravel.
In other words, the
It's always
roads,
like a mound of dirt there. It's-
The road, Paducah Road down is from entirely different location. than what it used to be
Yeah.
years ago.
It went right down by where,
It went right down by Benton Safety Service and down through there years ago, didn't it?
Yeah.
I'd call First Street, you know, where Benton Safety
Yeah.
Service is, across the railroad track.
Yeah.
Went
Yeah.
on down through the bottom.
right straight on down by
Right
that
on down through
that
there.
last street
Yeah.
was the road.
Well, now it doesn't even exist, it goes down there so far.
Well, it went on down, and of course it's not
That's
a
where,
road.
did you recollect the
What
covered
all?
bridge?
Yeah, our uncle and aunt, Uncle Leon and Aunt Feeler Jones lived way down there in the bottom, if
Yeah,
you
we
remember.
lived over there.
They lived on the left as you went down toward Paducah.
And now we owned that land to the covered bridge place, wasn't it?
is the covered bridge still there?
No.
It's been gone for years. Been gone for years.
This was back in the early 30s when they lived there. And what now is the Benton and Paducah Road
Land,
was land,
farmland.
farmland. Then it was what actually they call First Street now, see, down across the railroad track at Benton Safety Service and go straight on,
Mhm.
old covered bridge and all, and you went across and went into Paducah.
Yeah.
Just like now, the Reedland going through Benton Road to Cleveland, to there. Now the road changed.
Back before they had cars here, how long did it take to go to Paducah in a wagon? Would you say,
Oh, about 4 hours.
you go from here to Paducah in 4 hours without any stops? Did you go to Paducah very much back then?
Yeah.
You still went to Paducah?
We hauled our tobacco down there and we go once in a while. but-
Go shopping.
Well,
So
Well, they didn't used to, when they take the tobacco down to Paducah, did they go and stay overnight?
yeah.
They had to tell people.
I have went down and back today. I
They
looked down
would
and
go
get
and stay, generally, they take tobacco, stay overnight.
Talk over that way so we can hear you.
I don't want you to hear. When I was small, Grandpa and Grandmama Greer and Pappy and Mammy would go in the wagon, and it'd take us a long time, we'd spend the night. There was a Miss Ingram, I believe, run a boarding house and everything. Eat there and everything. Shopping a little the next day.
So in other words, going to Paducah then was really, like we talk about going to, say, Chicago or St. Louis or somewhere now.
It's really simple.
Well, that's just like Sonny Rose was talking today. The way things have changed in the years since I was a young boy growing up. We used to have one doctor, Dr. Coffey, in this town. He made
Dr.
house
Harris.
calls and all.
Dr. Harris.
And, well, this is when I was,
Okay, that's right. Lynn, what was the first doctor you remember being in Marshall County?
Dr. Harris.
Dr. Howard. Do you know, was he from Marshall County or do you know?
No, I don't know where he's from, but he lived here a long time.
There was no hospital in
No.
Benton when you were young, was there? Where did people go to when they had to go to the hospital?
What to do
You think people gets better service now or then?
now?
You think people gets better service now? You think the doctors in Benton are all dedicated men then? Well, another thing we want to talk about is Tater Day. How it was when you were young and what do you think about the changes in it? What was exactly Tater Day when you were young?
They sold sweet potatoes, horses, mules, traded.
Edith, you mentioned a little while ago that women didn't go on Tater Day.
No, this was strictly the men's day.
And they actually bought and sold sweet potatoes on that day.
Traded horses.
All horses.
What, where did this take place at in Benton? Was
Around
it,
the square.
it was strictly around the courthouse
Yeah.
square, but there was no parades or no
No.
bands or nothing like that. It was just strictly a trade day. Did people come from distance, or was it strictly people in Marshall County?
No, they come from counties around.
So it was, even back then, it was a well-known day.
Yeah,
And people came, you say, was far away from Paducah or further?
well, there's some, a few, not too many. Oh, they run the train back and forth. That's a big singing day. That's a big singing day. They run extra trains.
Came back and forth.
But I don't
You
think
could see wagon loads of potatoes though coming
Yeah.
from way off from Graves
Yeah.
County and like that.
The other people bring
Yeah.
potatoes in here to sell. What about Tater Day? Do you still go to see them?
I don't know if I've ever missed a one.
Well, you, in other words, you enjoy Tater Day.
Yeah.
How, wasn't too bad all the rain we got on this last one.
It is pretty bad.
Yeah. But do you enjoy the bands that they have on Tater Day
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Do you think that people had more fun when you were young at Tater Day or now?
It seems like they're having more fun now.
Seems like they're having more fun.
That was strictly a business
idea
day
was
then.
change.
Yeah, when did Tater Day change from being strictly trade day to,
I don't know. It's been 20 years ago.
you said this gradually started getting bigger and changing? Was there ever a year that there wasn't a Tater Day?
Not that I know of.
As long as you can remember, there has been one every year. I believe they said this was either the 134th or 135th, straight one.
134th.
About what year did the women start going for Tater Day? Do you recall?
No, 12, 15 years ago.
So it's really since the Second World War that the ladies and the children has been gone. Did the men used to take the boys,
Yeah.
but the girls stayed home with their mothers?
They didn't let out school for 30 days.
No, in other words, it wasn't no holidays at all, except it was just for the farm. It was, I would say it was strictly a farmer's day.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is they said that it used to be a really big singing day or something in Marshall County.
It sure did.
And that's really changed now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us a typical big singing day when you were young.
Well, back when I was growing up in the younger years, it's a bigger day. There's more people there. They come from everywhere.
You You said a minute ago they ran special trains from
They
Duke to
did.
bring the people in.
And out of Tennessee, they come here, out of Tennessee as well.
What would go on in town done this big singing?
Sing all day.
That was strictly what it was.
They had places to stand, you know, to sell ice cream, cold drinks, and everything like that around the square.
But it strictly was a singing day.
Mhm.
Well, which would you say was the biggest when you were young, Tater Day or Big Singing Day?
Big singing day is most people.
Big Singing Day would be larger than Tater Day. Which did you enjoy the most when you were young?
Oh, I don't know if it make much difference.
Make much difference? You wouldn't, in other words, to pick
I
between
like both days.
You enjoyed both days. Did the families all look, what about families? Did all the families go to Big Singing Day?
Yeah.
So in other words, as far as the family concern was, if family outing, Big Singing Day was more than Tater Day for the whole family. Doug, shut it off for a minute. Okay, this is push the stop. Push the stop button. Now tell us about Big Singing Day when you were young, how Benton was.
Well, all the stores are around the court square. And they roasted all around the square, and didn't nobody go in there but the people. We got no horses, nobody go there.
In the court square.
And even after cars, they didn't let anybody go in there, you know, with cars either. I mean, there's still a big crowd going as long
Another good thing,
as the cars.
I said, about it, they had the hitching racks all around the court square.
The people,
People hitched their horses.
when they rode into town,
Yeah,
Not on Big
But
Singing.
no, no, they didn't have nothing to say.
you mentioned a little while ago that a lot of people look forward to Big Singing Day because they could buy lemonade and different things. That,
Ice cream.
that back then was really a treat instead of every day.
Yeah,
When did ice cream first come in Marshall County? Can you remember the first ice
no,
cream?
I was here when but they made it to sell at the drugstore. Most of them. Well, Archie, he made ice cream every few days. We used to go over and buy it by the gallon. You know, he had a machine and he made it.
In other words, the drugstores in Benton made their own ice cream.
Yeah.
Would you say that ice cream is better than what you get today?
No.
It was awful good.
Yeah, it's good, but I would say
I guess it's because we didn't have it.
we want a gallon of ice cream, we just go to the drugstore and carry him a gallon of milk and stuff.
Now, you said your Uncle Archie, what was his full name?
Archie Nelson.
Was he one of the first people that had a drugstore in Marshall County?
First one I recollect.
First one that you, is he any kin to this Nelson? Just, what you say his name was?
It's his boy.
So in other words, the Nelsons has been in the drugstore business in Benton as long as you can remember.
Yeah.
So there's a history right there in the drugstore business with the Nelsons. Another thing, Lynn, that we didn't talk about a while ago was the business drugstores and things like that. It used to be the drugstores, when you wanted some medicine, you went to them by as much as you did to the doctor.
The doctors carried the medicine with them.
The doctors carried the medicine with them. But didn't the drugstores, those sell a lot of home remedies that you don't
Yeah.
get today? Well, I've understood that a lot of times when you're sick, you just went to the drugs and he'd give you medicine. And that has been changed, hasn't it?
That's against the law.
But back
Pop
then,
the pill.
when you went to the doctor, he'd give you most of the medicine. You never
Yeah,
had to go to
he
the
got the
store.
medicine with him.
In other words, it wasn't prescription medicine like we
No.
have now.
Well, I can
Yourself,
remember.
you had to go to
No,
the store
you
and get a
didn't.
prescription filled. The doctor had his own pill bag.
Yeah.
Just empty them out there and just send it right there on the
Lynn, what else have you thought about that we haven't got on this tape?
That's about all I need.
Edith, what about you?
Yes, I don't know.
I see a freezer over here full of food. Do you think that's an advantage over canning for the farmer's wife?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit. About when did the first freezers come to Marshall County? Do you remember about how long they've been and if the farmers have been using freezers?
I don't
About
know,
the time we got electricity, we had one.
not too awful long
In other words, right after the Second World War.
Yeah.
Did they have electricity in Benton before Second World War?
I guess it was just lights.
Yeah, it's reading the light.
In Benton.
Yeah, electricity by their own power.
Yeah.
Before the Second World War.
Now, my grandpa Smith
When
had,
electricity really started throughout Marshall County is when the dam was built in Gilbert.
he had his own,
Generator.
lights at his house, grandpa
Well,
Smith.
Benton
A
used
number
to
of
have,
years ago when they had little generators, it cost a lot, but
Yeah.
the guy had electric lights, he had a generator built out the back in a little building.
Yeah, grandpa
It was
Smith.
really something.
Benton had their own power plant there.
Yeah.
Has Benton, as far as you can remember, always had their own water system?
No. Back when I was a boy, they had wells, sisters just like.
Each individual home had to be
Yeah.
responsible for their own wells. They didn't have sewer when you was young either, Marshall
No.
County did they? All that has been, how are the streets in Benton? The streets
There's
in
gravel.
gravel when you was a child.
No sidewalk.
In other words, if it rained and that, you liable to get mud on it.
Well, they had, some of them had boardwalks.
Made out of just wooden planks.
There wasn't any on the right up in town.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, the school buses, that's another thing that wasn't around when you was a child.
No.
Regardless of how far you lived from school, you walked.
Mhm.
My husband said even when he was going to school before the Second World War down here, they didn't have buses. How far did you walk to school, Lynn?
I guess it's right at a mile, wasn't it, Scotty?
Yeah.
What about you, Edith? Did you-
I walked a mile.
But regardless of how far the children lived from school, they had to either
Had to
walk,
walk or ride some dad and mother carried them.
but they had no buses at all for the
Some
children.
people walked up most
So I walked every day unless a storm would come up and had to come after me.
When he
In
come
a
after,
buggy.
come after you buggy. What about the weather? Do you think the winters and summers, the weather has changed that much from when you were young?
I think they've changed to some. Back in 1917, 18, on there, we had cooler weather.
What about this past winter? Was that like back when you was a child, or
It wasn't as cold as this past winter. I don't think it was that 1917, 18.
do you think those winters were what? What about the summers, the weather in the summertime?
I don't think there's too much
You
difference.
think it's about the same? How about you, Edith?
Seems about the same. I guess it doesn't seem quite as hot on account of having air conditioning. Yeah.
Another thing, this lake here has brought in so many industries into Marshall County. Do you think that's a good thing for Marshall?
Except
Not only Marshall County, but farther out even.
walks around.
What about the prices of land? How many times do you say it's doubled or tripled since you were young, Lynn?
Oh, it's a lot higher. I bought land $10 an acre,
And about approximately, would you say that same land would sell for now?
$1,000,
$1,000.
$1,200.
So the land has really multiplied in price. You think it's still gonna go up?
Yeah.
You think land will continue to grow up?
That land I bought up there for $10 an acre, I got over $1,000 for it.
Years ago.
Yeah.
We won't tell how many years we've had that, we can erase that. But, I'm looking to see if I've covered everything.
Low profit.
But I tell you, I spent a lot of money to get that land where it's at. It's growed up.
Getting all half washed away and it wouldn't grow anything hardly, but it, you know, you could build it up and it's really, it wouldn't compare with value to what it was then. I mean, it's so much better.
Benton has a park which they're proud of. When you were young, they have a place for the boys to go and play ball.
Yeah.
Where did you play ball? Where was this located at when you were a boy?
It was down there where,
Dairy Queen?
where that true value store is, what's the name?
Benton Hardware.
In
Benton.
Hardware, that whole business back there. Ballpark.
That's where you played ball at.
And when circuses come to town, that's where they
That
always.
was our park.
Did many circuses come to town when you were
Yeah.
small?
2 or 3 every year.
2 or 3. That was really a big event in
Yeah.
people's lives, wasn't it?
And that's where the medicine man and all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Animal,
But where the Benton True Hardware is on 12th Street there across the bridge, that's where the ballparks and everybody,
all that back there, where them houses and trailers,
all that,
hospital, that was all part
back in the hospital and all. But you think that even back then, people wanted the children to get activities and sports? Did they have football in the winter on those same parks? Did they
of that. We
have
had our football games mostly on school property.
on school property? But they played baseball in the
They
summer?
baseball in
Did they have any, I know that you belong to the Farm Bureau, and they have those farm co-ops and all that. Did they have any of that when you were first getting started in farming? They didn't have any of the farm things. All that has come in your later. You think they are advantage or disadvantage to
there. I
farmers?
think we're an advantage.
You think they are advantage? In other words, you want to see all these continue for the farmer. Do you think the farmer has a better life now as far as the government controls, or when he was, before the government stepped in?
The government control helped out some. It was hard when the farmer get started.
It got to be a
It got
disadvantage.
to be a disadvantage.
Disadvantage. Of course, there's a lot of pros and cons about that. There will be from now on. Edith, you were in one of the first homemaker groups that started meeting in Marshall County, wasn't you?
Well, not on the very beginning, but I was in there not too long after it started.
About when did the homemakers get started in Marshall County?
I don't really know. I guess when I belonged was about 1943.
Do you think they really
We'd already been here, though we'd already had, I think, a couple of home agents before this, when I started.
do you think the homemakers has been a benefit to Marshall County?
It was great benefit to me.
Great. What's some of the things that you would say that you learned from being in the homemakers?
Well, I learned so much about learning to sew.
Learning to sew. What's some other advantages that was in it besides sewing?
Well, we had a lot of good times together. Learned crafts and things like that. Cooking.
So in other words, the homemakers has been a big help to this part of the Marshall County, would say.
We learned a lot about foods and how to prepare them. And learned a lot about freezing and things like that too.
In other words, when the freezers first came out, they helped you with
They did.
Then what about, do they have anything like the homemakers for the men?
No,
They don't have anything separate for the men.
that county agent.
They have the county agents that helps the farmers.
Yeah, I was in several programs, county agent programs, and had building land up.
Well, we belong to the Farm and Home Development Group. That was through the county agent and the home agent.
Now, all these things they have now, like the farm at home agency and the homemakers, they didn't have that when you first started farming.
No.